So you just see me as Eric, and I look normal, I sound normal, I talk normal, but upstairs, I'm not the same person. That's the one thing that I wanted people to see, that other people should get empathy too. And that sometimes that's all we want. Either that or give me a big fucking hug, because I could really use one some days, you know?
Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This episode is brought to you by Goodr. Goodr has the slickest shades around for only $25 and $35. They don't slip or bounce, and they stay on my face way better than more expensive sunglasses do. If you'd like to support me and the show, treat yourself to a pair or two or three of Goodrs and head over to Goodr.com and get 15% off your entire order with the code FTLR. That's 15% off at Goodr.com, code FTLR. Your face will thank you. Thank you to Tracksmith for their support of For the Long Run podcast. Tracksmith is a Boston-based running apparel brand born from a desire to celebrate both the history and the evolving culture of running. I have been loving their Van Cortlandt long sleeve, which pairs well with the Alston half tights on a brisk fall day. And welcome back. I have Eric Esposito joining me on the podcast today. Eric, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Yeah, man. Helping fill my day out today.
Likewise. It's a quiet time of year for sure. So the first question is always a hard one. Who is Eric?
I mean, it's only hard because I can talk your ear off and burn through all our time in the first question. I'm an architect who... I'm an architect who's a former architect due to my life circumstances. I became a triathlete 2014, got into running, and eventually that led to my accident that ended my career as an architect. But I continued on as a triathlete. I mean, so that's kind of what I built my personal, I guess, my identity around is, swim, bike, and run. So that would be the simplest answer, I guess.
What got you into the triathlon?
So I was coaching a U.S. Master swim team, the Atlanta Rainbow Trout. They're an all-inclusive team if you didn't get by the Rainbow Trout part. They're really cool people, and not all of them are gay. But, the ones on the team that were triathletes, for like 2.5 years, they bugged me about doing a triathlon. And I kept saying no. And so finally said, all right, I'll do one. And I did one, and, with triathlons, either you're never going to want to do one again or you're going to get hooked, and I got hooked.
What was that first finish line like?
It's funny because I had just been seeing a girl, right? And we were supposed to go down. It was in Tallahassee. And we were supposed to go down and visit her sister because she works for Florida State. I'm like, okay, great. I have a place to crash. We broke up like 8 weeks before the race. I'm like, well, I don't have a place to crash anymore. So my friends came down with me and they're like, well, we'll watch you race. I'm like, okay. And what happened was they didn't get out of the hotel and before the race. So I go across the finish line. I'm like, where's everybody at? It was like a weird feeling. It's like, I thought my friends were here. Like, oh, we slept in. I'm like, well, okay. So that's what my first finish line was like.
A little non-traditional.
Yeah.
So you finished. How'd it feel?
It felt good. I got third in my age group in my first race. It wasn't a big race, but it's like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'm going to really like this. It was kind of like that encouragement to like, let's do another one.
And so the second one, how are you feeling on that start line?
How I felt was different than how it ended, It's like that meme, how it started, then how it ended. It started off great. It's like I was, I had a killer swim time because I was a swimmer before I went into triathlon. So, and I'm on the bike and I get 2 flat tires and I only carry 1 spare. So for the race support to come around to get to me, I waited an hour and a half and I debated just walking back because I was like 6 miles out. But I finished. It was not the most pleasant experience. The third one was the one where I really had that full experience of like euphoria,
What was that like?
Oh man, it was cool. It was an independent race called Beach to Battleship, and it was one of the bigger independent races. And I know the race director really well now. 5 years past that, and it had this independent races take on the flavor of their race director. Ironman is corporate, so this had personality to it, and it had his name written all over it. And I loved it. It was a great experience. There was nothing I didn't like about it.
Very cool. So when we initially spoke, you mentioned your accident and what that did to both your mental and physical state. So talk to me about the training you were doing leading up to that, and what were your goals at the time?
Honestly, so what happened was I did Ironman Chattanooga, and it was the last weekend of September. So I had no other triathlons till like at least May of next year. So this was my off season. And I had bike commuted before at previous jobs. And I was thinking, Decatur, from where I'm living at in Vinings, is 15 miles out, 15 miles back. That's a decent workout, that I don't, I can get out and ride. So it was going to be like off season miles to do that. And the first day went well. I'm like, okay, this wasn't too bad. And it was the second day that I got hit. So it was really just my off season, and I had no expectations, no plans. It was just me getting outside and enjoying the fall weather for now until it got cold.
And talk to me about that experience and what happened afterwards.
Well, when you get hit head on by a Tahoe traveling 60 miles an hour, it's a little painful. It's not very pleasant. But I only broke my finger out of the deal. Other than the traumatic brain injury, I got road rash, some bruises, and a broken finger. And, my face was kind of messed up because I got ejected from my pedals because I clip into the pedals, right? It ejected me from the pedals, and I took off his mirror with the side of my face. And then to make matters worse, I was unconscious, but it basically, back of my head hit the asphalt pretty hard. So I got a double tap on that. And it was, it kind of unfolded slowly from there because you don't really know the extent of your brain injury. For me, it was like 6 to 8 weeks before we really knew, like, oh man, he is not right cognitively.
What were some of your first thoughts after realizing what happened?
Well, I'll give you the last thought that I had before I got hit. It was one of those things where it kind of got telegraphed. It felt like it slowed down a little bit. And I thought to myself, oh man, please don't let me die. Because I knew it was going to hit me. I didn't know what it was going to feel like. And then when I woke up, I was kind of in the fetal position, and there was a nurse practitioner who was walking her daughter to school that day. I never got a chance to thank her, and I'll never be able to find her. But, she's standing over me, talking to me, and I can hear her. And right now I'm like, I know I got hits, and I'm not supposed to move in case it's a spinal, but I can try to wiggle my fingers and my toes. That's not going to, if I have a spinal, it's not going to do anything. It's just wiggle my fingers and my toes. I wiggle my fingers, I wiggle my toes. It's like, okay, we're not paralyzed. It could be a lot worse. So that was the first thought that went through my mind.
Even in like a pretty terrible situation, it's cool that you found a way to like be grateful that it was the way it was and not worse.
Yeah. I mean, I used to lifeguard for many, many years. So, it kind of honed my instincts to certain things when, certain scenarios happen. Like I've had to backboard a spinal out of the wave pool when I was at a garden amusement park. It made my brain switch to like, all right, what just happened? Don't move, because it's only, if I moved and I had a spinal, it's definitely going to paralyze me. So, but you're not moving your spine or anything if you just wiggle your fingers and your toes. And if you can do that, you're not paralyzed.
So what happens next?
The EMTs didn't get there for a while. And, when you have so much adrenaline going through your body, you don't feel the pain quite yet. And once the EMTs got me in the ambulance, they loaded me up with fentanyl. So you didn't feel anything then either. I mean, I was pretty sure they hit every single pothole on the way to Grady Memorial. And, I remember distinctly that the black EMT asked me, he was asking me a bunch of questions. He asked me, who's the president? And I said, some asshole I don't like. You remember, this is 2017, so you can figure out who was president at the time. And he told me, he's like, we'll accept that. I'm like, all right. But, and then when we got to the hospital, it was a level 1 trauma center. My ex-fiance at the time, she's a physician extender, like the right-hand man of an orthopedic surgeon, one of the best foot and ankle guys in the Southeast. Thursday was an OR day. So she was scrubbing in when that nurse practitioner called her, right? So, she kind of like dropped her knees, and everybody in the ER is all calling all the attendings and residents they know at Grady. So everybody's all ready for me to get in there. And she was waiting there by the time they wheeled me in. So they got her down there super quick. And, I got a lot of attention because of that. The really, what's your level on profanity? Yes, no.
Go for it.
Okay. The really shitty part was somebody else came in before me that was a bloody mess. That was a gunshot wound that she didn't know. And she thought that was me. She's like, so yeah, when she realized that wasn't my clothes, she's like, oh, thank God.
Wow. So you mentioned the next few weeks and months and years were quite a challenge. Talk to me about that.
Well, athletically, it rebounded pretty quick. I ran a marathon like 4.5 months after I got hit. And that's because I had already paid for the race pre-accident, and I'm too fucking stubborn to eat $100. I was going to race it. It wasn't pretty. I went like 340 something. And, I stopped at the beer tent mile 25 and had like 15 Dixie cups full of Michelob Ultra because I already knew it wasn't a really good day. But I was like, fuck it. And then my ex at the time, when I finished, she's like, why do you smell like alcohol? I'm like, it's a long story, but yeah, the athleticism came back, but cognitively, I wasn't the same. It was like a big fog that was over my head, and I didn't stop drinking at the time. And my neurologist said, you have to, and I didn't because my relationship wasn't going all that well at the time. My ex wasn't quite ride or die. She didn't want to be with someone who could be mentally handicapped or disabled for the rest of their life. So she didn't really become an active participant in helping me recover. So I kind of felt abandoned. And when you don't feel like you have anybody, alcohol is a friend when you don't have one. So, that didn't help my situation until we split. But I had been through so many, neuropsych tests, and they kept showing all the same thing, that most people, show improvement after, by 6 months, that they're getting close back to normal. And I didn't show any improvement, but I also didn't get a really good medical care. My job, my employers, I told them I appreciate everything they did for me because they kept me on for 10 months, hoping that I would rebound. And I wouldn't have given myself that much time. I would have given myself 6 months tops. And one of the owners told me, he walked by my desk one day and he saw me trying to work, and he told in his deposition in the lawsuit, it was like watching a second grader try to do math. And it's like, oh my God, I'm that bad. So, and then I had all the vision issues, and there was a lot of stuff wrong. And I still have a lot of the vision issues. With a lot of vision therapy, they did improve, but I still have a blind spot in my eye, a narrow field of vision. So, there's a lot of things in my life that never got better, and I just had to find ways to adapt to.
Talking about that adaptation and the frustrations and breakthroughs that you've experienced there.
Yeah, it's, if you think of things in terms of poker, I got dealt a bad hand, but you have two options here. You can either fold and then go look for pity for someone else because you lost all that money, or you can play the hand you were dealt and see what. Hold on.
I'm reminding you, do the cat's hydration drip.
There we go. So to pause that, I have to use my Alexa for reminders and calendar stuff. That's one way I had to adapt, and I had to really utilize technology to fill in the gaps of my memory that I'll forget. So that was a good thing it reminded me, because I would have forgot saying I used her to do that. But, like the poker analogy, you can either go whine and look for pity that you had a shitty hand and you folded, or you can play the hand and see what turns up on the river and the turn cards, right? You might get a better hand. So I played the hand to see what I got. And, it taught me that you can just adapt to everything and compensate it. Like, for instance, I had just bought a brand new car 4 months before I got hit, right? And I had to deal with it for a long time because it sits lower and my field of vision is narrower. So I would drill potholes and curbs. It wasn't really safe, and my night vision sucked. So finally, I went and got an SUV, and it really with the new technology and everything, it really helped me compensate for the blind spots, the, lack of spatial awareness, and the height made me see better. And I just, it's a lot easier for me to save. So, I had to kind of do a drastic measure there to adapt. But, smaller things that I had to do was, use my Alexa to remind me of stuff all the time, set my alarms. I have so many Post-its around here. It was a lot worse when my brain was really foggy, and my ex really did hate how many Post-its were all over the house. But I had to do whatever I could just to keep my memory intact, because the short-term memory is really not that good. My long-term memory is fairly good. I didn't lose much of that, other than, I wasn't fluent in Spanish, but I knew it pretty well, and I lost all that. So, but other than that, the long-term memory was there. It's the short-term stuff, and that made it really hard to have conversations. Like I had to, when you and your spouse or whatever, you have a serious discussion about something that's going on, I had to prep myself before that, right? With an outline of things that I wanted to say. But the problem was whenever she would say something to answer it, I couldn't think of a rebuttal on the spot. So I was kind of, hamstrung by that. And it made having serious discussions that, were very important ones. It made it hard because I didn't have that ability to think of that follow-up question. And it did make life difficult. But for the most part, I had to go into conversations prepared. So I do that for pretty much everything now. Like whenever I go to therapy sessions with my counselor, I've got an outline of things that I want to cover, because I'll forget stuff as I go, right? Or when I go to doctor's visits, always have an outline. And I've tried to anticipate what he'll say and have a follow-up ready. And my perception was something that, oh my God, it was just so bad. I used to be able to read people really well, and I didn't think it was ever going to come back. It took 3.5 years. It's been like 4.25. It took very long to come back. And it's like, I had that ability to read people and read the room really well. I just couldn't do that. And it was really hard. So when I started to notice it came back, I'm like, yes, I missed this. This was one of those skills that it was very vital to, where I got to in life and being successful and, getting around and meeting people. And it was one of those things that I couldn't adapt for. There's no way that you can adapt for that. Once, if it's gone, it's gone. You can't, you miss some of the most obvious cues that people make, right? And it kind of changed the person who I was. You lose a unique ability that not everybody has, and it just makes you ordinary. Really, it makes you less than ordinary, because you didn't lose it, you just can't see the obvious now. So it was a difficult situation, but I couldn't adapt for that one thing. So I just waited it out, hope it got better.
As you were saying some of that, I was wondering about how most people would have thought about doing a podcast. And you reached out about this. And I can imagine that volunteering to talk about something like this, where you had mentioned, you plan your conversations, you plan things like that. Talking about even what we're doing now.
So it's kind of a two-part answer. First of all, for those first couple of years where the relationship was rocky, I kept getting fired from jobs because I was no longer a competent architect. I lived in fear every day that my ex was going to leave me, or was today the day I was going to get fired. Because, most jobs, they fire you on a Friday. I got fired on a Monday once. So I lived in fear every single day, not for Friday, but I never knew when that other shoe was going to drop, right? And they always told me, Eric, you're a great guy. We love having you here. You just can't do the job the way that you need you to, which is why part of the reason I ended up on disability. I can talk normal. I don't sound brain damaged. And, after not drinking anymore, obviously it sounds a lot better than if you listen to earlier episodes of the video log I put out or an earlier podcast, I sound horrible. But, I kind of suffered in silence because, I had been writing a book the whole time about everything that was happening to me. And I could put into words really eloquently what can happen to me. And I've had TBI people read everything I wrote, and they always tell me, you could say things that I didn't know how to, but I couldn't do it verbally. I had to do it written. And, my ex wouldn't read my book to kind of put herself in my shoes. I didn't have, I was all alone. My closest friends in my family don't live in Georgia. So I kind of had to go through this all on my own. And I kind of suffered in silence for a long time. And, after the split and I moved out, I decided, I didn't want to be silent anymore. And I wanted people to know my story. And I wanted people to reach out to me. And the second part of this is brain injury is the invisible injury. You can't see it, which means most people don't understand it, especially ones that, don't have extensive education. Like if you didn't go to college, it's hard for people to always wrap their brain around a brain injury. And if you don't understand it, it's hard to feel empathy for the person. And so, I didn't want pity from anybody. I never wanted pity. I just wanted empathy to someone to show me that, I feel you, I get it, and because it's an invisible injury that they just can't see, it's just one of those things that they can't establish that feeling. Had I had a compound fracture in 3 places in my leg, everybody would have understood that. They would have felt empathy. But, my dad and my brother, especially my dad, he doesn't understand it. I know he doesn't because he's like, why aren't you working? You can go back to work, you're fine. Then I'm not fine. But, I don't, you're not, you only have a high school education. And I'm not saying that's how everybody is, but, you can't process everything, all the medical stuff that went into it and everything. So you just see me as Eric, and I look normal. I sound normal. I talk normal, but upstairs, I'm not the same person. That's the one thing that I wanted people to see, that other people should get empathy too. And that sometimes that's all we want. Either that or give me a big fucking hug, because I could really use one some days,
Thanks again to Goodr for supporting this episode. I have a few different styles of shades, and I've been loving them on runs or while at the pool. At $25 a pop, you can leave a pair in your car so that you'll never be without some shades. You can feel good about your purchase too, as 1% of Goodr's annual gross sales, not profits, go directly to environmental nonprofits working towards making our world a better place. If you'd like to support me in the show, treat yourself to a pair or 2 or 3 of Goodrs and head over to Goodr.com and get 15% off your entire order. That's 15% off at GOODR.com with the code FTLR. Your face will thank you. Thank you again to Tracksmith for their support of the podcast. I've been a fan of Tracksmith and their community-first efforts ever since my early days of running in Boston. As my miles increase again ahead of some big goals this coming spring, I'm definitely doing it in comfort and style with their gear. I'm also proud to partner with Tracksmith because they're going to donate 5% of your order value to the Michael J. Fox Foundation for all orders, and you'll also get free shipping. The Michael J. Fox Foundation is dedicated to finding a cure and helping those living with Parkinson's. Both of my grandfathers have or had Parkinson's, and I'm grateful of Tracksmith's support for something so personal. Visit tracksmith.com/forthelongrun to see some of my favorite pieces, and all orders that start from that page will contribute towards this donation.
Yeah, I think the suffering in silence aspect is an interesting one. I talk a lot about mental health on this podcast and therapy and whatnot. And Scott Fauble used the analogy of, like, let's say I break my foot and I go to a physical therapist. Like, everyone understands that. And, you can take time off to go do that. But it's a bit of a different conversation. And that conversation's changing. He compared it to like a doctor for your brain. I mean, that's literally what it is. I'm not putting together. I'm not really summarizing his. He put it in a much better way. I'll put it that way. But I completely agree.
Well, what you're trying to say sounds a lot like what I just kind of stated, to where, because you can't see it, you don't empathize with it. Like that broken leg or the broken foot or whatever, they can see that and they can determine, wow, that must have been painful. That looks horrible. But, they can't see that I've got damage in my temporal lobe, and part of my frontal lobe. Cognitively, I'm not all together. I've got some longstanding issues, but unless you know me on a very personal level, and you will never see those things. And I'm not trying to hide them or anything, but you just have to be able to spend time with me and get to know me as a person. And you would have to know me before the accident to really tell. It's like he's not the same. And one thing I always say about the accident, my life, I was very happy at that point in time. I was planning to propose. I was ring shopping when I got hit. I had to have my mom finish the job, but everything was good. I was happy, and it was like someone shook the snow globe, right? All the snow goes up in the air. It takes a long time to settle, and when it lands, it's never in the same place that it was before. And that's kind of what it's been like with a traumatic brain injury,
So when you reached out initially, you mentioned you were training for your first half marathon in 2 years.
Yeah.
Where was the motivation or where did the desire come from to, as you said, get back into the shorties and singlet?
Kind of missed it. Doing three sports is fun. Sometimes I just want to run a road race. And by the way, that race was, I was not prepared for that. I hadn't been running a lot going into it. But it's one of those things where I already fucking paid for it. Might as well do it. And because I don't have any family in the area, I had nothing better to do that day. And I suffered. But I still did it. So, sometimes with me, it's kind of like, when a person sees food they really like, their eyes get really big and they just eat it all. And they feel a little bit sick afterwards because they ate so much, but they just love that food so much. That's how it is sometimes when I sign up with races. It's like, I want to sign up for this, I want to go here because I like to travel and go places that these races take you to places you never go before. So it's like, I want to do this, that. Sometimes my eyes are a little bit bigger than my stomach for signing up for races. And, then I underprepare and I pay the price for it. But I still like doing it. So, and it's like, I haven't run road races in a while. And it was one of those things that me and my ex did. So the story behind that is I had sworn off online dating because I said, you know what, this sucks. And I had just started a month earlier running at this women's running specialty store called Westride, right? And then, within a month, she shows up and we start talking, we start dating. So, I picked her up at a women's running store and our first date was a run. So a lot of stuff we did, like, after work, we go for runs. We do races together, right? I wouldn't always race them full speed serious. I didn't mind enjoying the moment, running her pace and just doing that as a couple. So, because she was strictly a runner, not a triathlete, we did a lot of road races. Plus, we were on the running store's team. So we got a lot of free entries to like 5Ks and 10Ks. So, and once COVID hit, they kind of dissolved the team and it hasn't been back. So I didn't have that opportunity to run all those races because, it was something that mixed up my training. And, plus we typically went with our two best friends too. So it was just something we always did as kind of a, like a family thing. And I just kind of miss running those road races. It's different.
And so you mentioned that you were a little undertrained for it, but was there some strong feeling of accomplishment of like thinking about how far you've come over the last couple of years?
I'll tell you what, the Atlanta Track Club has a phenomenal hype guy at the finish line. This guy he can make you feel like you could run through a wall. He's awesome. So he made me feel really good about running a 252. Like he's at every one of their races that they put on. He's a phenomenal hype guy. He's got to be a DJ or something. I don't know what he does after that, but he can personalize it to make you feel like you can run through a brick wall heading into that finish line. So I felt good doing it. It's like, he got me pumped up. And so I finished strong in it.
What's on tap going forward? What keeps you going?
It's always the next race. I signed up for a half in the middle of January that it's only about an hour and a half from Atlanta. So I don't even have to spend a night in a hotel, but I just do that because it's more or less another training run for me. I know I'm not in the greatest shape, but I can still run it at a decent pace and enjoy it. Plus, I love collecting finisher medals. It's cool. And I love putting a pin on my map. I have a race map for all the places that I've raced, got magnetic pins on it. A lot of it is pretty much all east of the Mississippi. But, come at the end of February, I had a resort stay booked that I had to put off for 2 years because of COVID. I'm like, I got to use this stay in Vegas for something. Rock and roll half at night. I'm like, sounds awesome. So, my mom doesn't get out of the house anymore because my dad never wants to go anywhere in retirement. So why don't you come with me to Vegas? We'll enjoy the trip. So, I like to include my mom or my friends, make it a weekend that I can enjoy, that I'm in it for the experience. I knew Memphis 70.3 in October. It wasn't going to be very pretty, and it was ugly. It was a shitty day because it rained and everybody got stuck in the mud. But I knew going there that I was going to eat a shitload of barbecue, and I didn't care how I was going to do because I wanted that Memphis barbecue, and that's what that experience was about. And I wanted an Elvis Christmas ornament too. So sometimes when I go to places and for races, it's not even about the race. It's about enjoying the ride and, getting a view of the scenery.
Cool. Talking about gratitude, is it something that you practice intentionally?
No, because as an adolescent and a young adult, I was a pretty ungrateful fuck. I'm not going to lie. If you ask my mom, she would say I'm different now than I was then. And it really started to change when I got into my late 20s. And, I've had a lot of luck along the way. There were friends, abandoned me. The ex didn't want to be a part of what this was. But, those close friends that were scattered all over the U.S. and my parents up there, they did what they could, to the extent that they were, they're possible. And I greatly appreciated that. My mom, after my breakup, I had to pack my shit and move out. And my mom knew it was going to take me 6 months to unpack it. I was just going to drag ass and sulk about the situation. She and her best friend, flew down. They dropped everything, flew down, and helped me unpack in 4 days. And, I was forever grateful for that I wanted to match that level of, I wanted to give them what they gave me. So I wanted to match the level of effort they put in. So I have planned a trip to take both of them to Alaska and enjoy all the things that they want to see the whales. They want to do this. I'm like, yeah, you did something really big for me. And I want to be able to say I can do the same thing for you too. And, sometimes people in our lives, they don't get to hear thank you a lot. And they really need to. So I've kind of made it a point to thank all the people who have helped me get better or done something for me that I would love to repay the favor. And sometimes I just can't. And thank you's the best I can do. But, I've always been kind of a stand-up guy as a friend. If you've ever seen the movie The Town, there's a line in there where I can't quote this verbatim because, again, my memory's shot. But, Ben Affleck walks in and he tells his friend, I need you to do me a favor. You can't ask me about it later. And you can't, and something else. And the guy says, whose car are we taking? That's the kind of friend, I've always been. It's like, whatever you need, you can ask me, no questions asked, and we'll do it. And I've learned that you got to tell people thank you for when they help you, but you should also do things for other people and not ever expect anything in return, just to do it out of the kindness of your heart because, it eventually comes back around. For me, it didn't seem like it would. It felt like a habitual ass kicking for a long time, but I knew eventually things have got to turn around. It's not going to suck always forever. It's like motivation to train. Some days it just sucks. You had a shitty day at work. Maybe you have a few shitty days. Maybe your boss is busting your balls for 3 weeks on a project, but eventually it turns around. Not every day's bad. So you just got to acknowledge that and know that, if you treat other people good and don't expect anything in return and you thank people for what they do for you, things will be all right in the end.
Yeah, I like that. What would you tell the Eric of 2014, knowing what you know now? What would you say to him then?
Do you want a facetious answer or a serious answer?
A serious answer.
Okay. Man, I don't think I would tell him anything. I'm not where I expected to be in life, but I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. So I don't think I would tell him anything different. The road sucked getting here, but I must have been meant to be here to do this, to put my story out there, to do all these things. I had a successful career, but maybe that's just not where I was supposed to be. and this is where I'm supposed to be. So I don't think I'd tell him to change anything other than don't buy the engagement ring because you were going to get it back. You could have bought a mountain bike. I could have bought a mountain bike, man. I don't have one. And I thought about that the second I bought that. I'm like, man, I hope this works out. So that's the only thing I would tell him. Don't buy the ring.
Now, what's your facetious answer?
That's the one.
I love asking this question because so often we think we're, in a better place or we're more educated or whatever than we were 5 years ago. But the fact of the matter, the reality is that sometimes you just have to get through it to get through it. And that's the secret, right?
Well, there's actually a line from the movie Mechanic that Jason Statham tells this kid that he's training to be a hitman. And he says, good judgment comes from bad judgment. So at the end of the day, you may think you know a lot, but in the end, you really don't know dick. And you got to fuck up or bad things that got to happen for you to make better choices or have better outcomes for the future. Because, not everybody gets it right off the bat. You got to fall a few times, tragedies, whatever, failures and pitfalls, they all happen. And you got to learn how to make better choices or figure out how to get better outcomes out of it. So good judgment comes from bad judgment is the best advice I could give out of a movie.
You mentioned you're writing a book. Talk to me about that.
It's kind of like a memoir that I wrote in it every day for 4 years. And I write a lot. My website, I've been writing since 2016 and I never stopped, but I started writing the book. Originally, I meant it to be, when I went to trial, I knew my memory was shit. So I needed something to remind me of everything that was happened because there's so much that I would forget. And when I would write it in there, everything was written as it would sound in an actual book. I wrote in that kind of prose writing style and it would be a refresher. And the second reason that I did it was, with me and my ex, because of the brain injury, we couldn't speak the same language. You know how I said the perception was off? Well, big part of that perception is she was always a person who kept the cards close to the vest. And being able to read everything about her, if I could read her, I could pick up what she was feeling based on her neurotic dog that had felt her. So I could always figure out everything. But with the brain injury, I couldn't. And she couldn't figure out what I was saying. And I meant for this book to be like a Rosetta Stone, because again, I have trouble expressing myself verbally because I can't compose thoughts, yada, yada, yada. But I could hand you this book and you could look at everything that's been happening to me, thoughts, feelings, everything. And you could walk a mile in my shoes, not read somebody else's book about living with a brain injury. You could read mine to know exactly what I was feeling. And, those were the two original reasons. But obviously she never read it and I never needed it for court. So I want to, I was on Reddit and I asked people just read my story because, after the breakup, I felt like shit, like I wanted to die. I just needed someone, I was in silence for so long. I needed someone to know. I had like 200 people answer. They said they want to see my book. And those are all the people who said you were able to put things into words that I didn't know how. Even with the brain injury, I still kind of had that. I didn't lose that ability, that gift. And so it kind of took, what's the word I'm looking for? It took on a different purpose, not benevolent purpose, but, it found an alternative reason for existing that maybe one day it could help people. It's so goddamn long that I got to figure out what to do with it. But I knew that if I could put into words that what other people feel but couldn't say, then maybe I was meant to get it out there. So
what does that mean to you that people shared those kinds of things with you?
Honestly, like saying it to you, I absolutely hate. Like it feels like I toot my own horn. It makes me feel pretentious. It's just one of those things that, people tell you that, but it's an uncomfortable feeling when you say it, that what people said about you. I've never really gotten used to it, but like I said, I'm not where I expected to be at 36, but maybe this is where I was supposed to be. Maybe I was supposed to be a mouthpiece for all the people who didn't know how to say everything that they had been experiencing. I don't know.
There's a lot of strong science on what happens neurologically when you receive gratitude. Dr. Andrew Huberman is a neuroscientist out of Stanford, and he talks a lot about how powerful this act can be for the person receiving the gratitude. And it's motivating, it stimulates, the neurons that need activation and whatnot.
Yeah, it's kind of like a dopamine release,
Yeah. I think the last couple of years have highlighted, you talked about suffering in silence. The last couple of years have highlighted just how many people are suffering in silence, and the fact that like conversations like this normalize that. And personally, I've learned that nobody has their shit together and everybody is dealing with something. But I think we're seeing it now more than ever that there's a little more empathy across the board. And I hope that that trend continues.
Well, not only brain injuries are the invisible injury, but mental health, like I said, the poorly educated, they really can't wrap their brain around something that they just can't see. It's just one of those things that they lack that critical thinking skill to process like how complicated mental health is, in that there's something wrong with that person, but they can't physically manifest what's wrong with them.
I think even the highly educated have trouble with acknowledging mental health as a core thing that needs work.
It's, I've had mental health issues for a long time. After the accident, I suffered depression. And it was that kind of, that depression where you crawl into a big fucking dark hole and you feel like you can never get out. And I did that, it was at the time, it was still, it wasn't FDA approved, but I did that ketamine therapy, and it was fucking everything that the literature said. I heard about it on NPR one day driving to work. And I was like, this can't be true. Like, it works so fast on the depression that, my ex said this was bullshit. But after the first IV infusion of it, I felt like when I walked out of the office, the colors were a little bit more vivid. Sounds were a little bit more crisp. I felt different. And, after the 6 sessions, it was like a miracle. It fucking worked. Like, I didn't have the depression anymore. And that was part of the, with the brain injury and the PTSD, man, I was completely fucked in the head. It felt like my brain was scrambled eggs for so long, and I just couldn't process anything.
It's so fascinating with mental health. And again, people are starting to realize that it doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It's just a chemical imbalance. And you introduce additional support in the form of chemicals or therapy and antidepressants and whatnot. And it like literally like fixes these connections and gives you the chance to feel better.
Well, like I have ADHD and I've been diagnosed since a young age. I'll tell you what, if I'm not able to take Adderall in the morning, I will lay on my couch and stare at the ceiling all day. I am that non-functional of a person without it. And that's one of those things where like I needed the medication just to make me equivalent to a normal person,
For sure. Switching gears a little bit, what does success mean to you?
I don't know. I'm still searching for that, I think. In a way, I guess success is just happiness of some sort. I guess you don't have to look at success on a macro level where, you've got these big accomplishments, achievements. For the depressed, maybe success is you just got out of the house today and you went to the mailbox to get to the mail and you hadn't done that in 2 weeks. Maybe that's success to someone. It's a relative concept. Not everybody's going to have the same definition. And if you ask me at various points in my life, I would have told you different answers. And, today, I have successes with those little battles, but, I've yet to achieve that really big successful moment. I don't know what it is that I would define it. I couldn't say, but I feel like I know it when it happens. I wouldn't have to say, I'm shooting for this. If I don't get this, I'm not a success. I feel like if I just continue about my daily life and good shit happens, that I'll just acknowledge it and it's like, yeah, this feels good. I don't think to be successful, you have to start out with an intent, do this, you have a goal and achieve it. That's true sometimes, but I don't think it's true all the time. So maybe my definition of success will be different a year from now? I don't know. Like, I didn't think I would be. A lot of people didn't think I could stay sober for 1 year, and now I'm on. New Year's Day is going to be 2. That's a big success for me. Considering all the men on my mom's side of my family are hardcore alcoholics, and I've managed to break away from that. That's kind of a big success for me, that I was able to buck the trend that the entire family has. It took a while to do it, but that's a win in my book.
Totally. I was doing some reflecting yesterday on this podcast and the conversations I've gotten to have over the years. And this is almost episode 200 now.
Holy shit.
I think, 75% of them have been with professional and elite athletes who have achieved some sort of objective metric of success. They've been to the Olympics. They've won a major race. They've done this. They've done that. And what I find to be fascinating is that they all pretty much define success in the same way that you just did. They don't define it as, I won a gold medal in Rio, or I did, I won the New York City Marathon, or this and that. And many of them have. They all define, or many of these high performers have defined success in the same subjective way that you did. And what I think is fascinating about that is this allows you to be in control of your own success. And there's nobody else who has an influence on your ability to be successful, right? If you pick something subjective that you are the only person in control of achieving that objective and you achieve it, you're successful. And if you are unsuccessful in achieving that goal, you learn and you tweak and you do something different in the future, or it's a sharpening or a pivot. I think it's a really astute answer, and it's cool that you acknowledge that this is not how you would have answered this question 5 or 6 years ago. But I think it's a really interesting answer, particularly because it's in line with so many others.
I think on the most basic level, like we're talking like the lowest level of Maslow's hierarchy of human needs. Happiness to me, if you're happy in general or just about something, you're a success. You're doing something right to be happy. And, it doesn't matter what it is, but if things are going right, you're happy. And that's a success on the most basic level of human needs, right? At least in my mind, that's what it is.
Very cool. Well, Eric, thanks so much for taking the time to chat today and sharing yourself and your story with us. For those who would like to follow along, where can we find you on your corner of the internet?
Just Espo Swim Bike Run, ESPO Swim Bike Run. There's, Instagram, YouTube. So I got a lot of stuff on YouTube.
Cool.
Thanks, man, for having me on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for sharing this, and excited to hear about your adventures going forward.
Thank you.
Of course.
That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next time on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too. This podcast and the accompanying music has been produced by Brian Walters of Single Track Sound. For the Long Run's logo was created by Vanessa Wolf of Sterling Wolf.